Okay, hi everybody. I just thought I'd go over a little bit about the fabric selection sheet. So you can see here we have, and a bit about cutting. So fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric 3, fabric 4, fabric 5, and your binding may be the same as fabric 1 or it may be something totally different. It really just depended on fabric availability. So that's kind of a good idea to do ahead. If you've already done it, that's great. If not, just take a little snippet if you can, so that later you will know. It'll be super important later. So that's a little bit about that. Now let's go over a little bit about cutting. It's pretty straightforward, this pattern for the cutting. You can use a regular ruler, or you can also use a Stripology ruler if you have one of those. So when your fabrics are labeled, if you leave them labeled right on the fabric, that's super. If you just use that sheet and keep it handy somewhere where you can see it, that's super. You can see the pattern also calls the fabrics light, medium, dark, large scale, and medium scale. I've provided you with something that will help you refer to what we labeled them as for ease of conversion and understanding which is which. So you can see in this pattern, there's a lot of 2.5 inch strips and some 6.5 inch squares. So I'm just going to choose a fabric and give you a little demonstration. I've already cut some of this fabric. So they're smaller pieces, as you can see. So here's a chunk of fabric, and I'm going to want to cut some 2.5 inch strips with this. And I'm going to use my Stripology ruler to demonstrate today. The first thing with the Stripology ruler, your fabric should always be pressed nicely so there's not a lot of creases. You want to fold it in half, again, because the Stripology ruler isn't wide enough, and you're going to bring it up and fold it so that that fold crease is right even with the edge there. This is the important straight edge. The selvages aren't always straight, and there's a really good thorough video from Gudrun Erla about this kind of thing. So I'm just going to give you the basics. So I place it so that I can see what I'm doing. And of course I'm going to have to move it a little bit because tripod's too close. You can still see. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I don't really have to worry about anything on here because I'm going to be using the edge of the fabric with the lines on the Stripology ruler to do it. Yeah, I'm going to have to move a little bit. So I want to place it so that I can get a straight edge. So this is what's important here, is the bottom edge with a straight line. My Stripology ruler is older, so it's not as deep this way. So I really have to make sure that my fabric is folded again in half perfectly. So it's a little bit of a key. So I can straighten up the edge. I'm going to move my Stripology ruler over a little bit. This line is even with the straight edge of the fabric. And I'm going to trim it off to get a good edge to start. So when all of you asked about straightening fabric, this is a perfect thing to do. I don't know if you can see it really well, but there's a little bit of fabric hanging over there. I don't know if I'll make you seasick doing this, but there's a little bit of fabric hanging over the edge. There's my slot of 0. And this is a slotted ruler. So let's see if I can move the tripod that way so you can see a bit better. And move it like that. Okay, so it's a slotted ruler, and I'm going to want to get my straight edge in by doing there. Got a nice straight edge along the bottom, so this is going to give me a nice straight 90 degree. The key with this is it's a nice wide heavy ruler. It'll hold your fabric down even when it goes across there. The key is, you don't want to put your hands there because you're going to stick the knife in and slot along there. Unlike other rulers where you need a lot of pressure to keep it down, the ruler creates a bit of its own pressure. So your first cut should be nice and even, and you want to go straight up from top to bottom. I don't move it. I don't need to move the ruler and get rid of that. It'll happen later. So if you can see well here, let's see if you can see well. There are squares along the ruler, and every square is at 2.5 inch increments. And so for this particular cut, That is perfect because I need to cut a few 2.5 inches. The pattern's going to tell us exactly how many. Because this video will be available to many people, for copyright reasons, I'm not going to give you specifics on how many. So I'm going to put my ruler in, make sure that I cut right from the edge. Newer rulers, this isn't as much of an issue, as I said, because the ruler's actually deeper. Stick it in, a little bit of firm pressure up to the edge. It's nice and straight, you don't have wobbling, and you're good to go. Now, I'm going to make you seasick by moving the ruler. So when I move the ruler out of the way, and if you can see, there's my straight edge given. There's my 2.5, there's my 2.5, and my waist. I have some perfect 2.5 inch strips. So you're going to follow the pattern accordingly. I encourage you to cut one fabric group at a time, and we're going to do a bit of that in a different video, but I encourage you to cut it and stick a post-it note or a label with it. This is fabric 1, pieces times 2.5, label it. This is fabric 1, squares this big, pieces. And I want you to leave them labeled, and you're going to stack them together. That way you'll be sure you know exactly which fabric is which when we come to the next step. All right, join me for the next step shortly.